Hari Om and Namaskar. Namaskar to Pujya Swamini Vimlananda ji and Namaskar to all the organizers. It is a wonderful and delightful experience to be in Madhya Pradesh. Many years back, a couple of states far, I'm coming from Gujarat, but this is my very first time in Madhya Pradesh, and what a beautiful welcome and what a beautiful place to be in here. Let me take you a few years back. I have been very fortunate to have a lot of informal dialogues with Pujya Amma, and this journey started when I was 16 years old. I was 16, my first year of MBBS, and the very first class that I walk in was the class of embryology. Embryology, where a zygote is formed, a baby is formed. As they were teaching that, I was taking a step back and said, oh my God, where is this life coming from? What is all this happening? You know, a small little zygote turning into a baby. That was such a profound thinking that I had. I came back home. My parents were both medical field professionals. My dad was a doctor. And I told them, I said, can you tell me where is the life originating from? And they were absolutely confused. They had no answers. I kept on asking this question, and one fine day, my mom said, I think there is somebody who is coming on the television. Possibly she will answer your question. And that was Amma's talk was going on. And I opened a newspaper, serendipitously. She was going to come to Jamnagar in Gujarat for a lecture. And I still very vividly remember sitting in one of the second benches. You know, I thought, okay, let me give it a try. So I finished my pathology class, and with my lab coat, and I don't know if Amma does remember that, but I was sitting there in Narad Bhakti Sutra. I had zero idea who Narada was. I had zero idea on what bhakti was, and I had completely zero knowledge of spirituality as such. My very first, I was completely, the first time exposure, and I was completely taken aback when Amma was speaking. And I think that was my very first exposure to even Vedanta. And many years later, it has been a beautiful journey talking to her and meeting so many people whose lives have been touched by her profound knowledge of Advaita Vedanta. And I'm extremely fortunate today, Amma, to be talking to you in a formal dialogue, because that's not what I'm used to. So please do forgive me if I do not step up to your expectations. She's very particular in everything, so please do forgive me beforehand. But I'm sure that it is going to be one evening of a delight because Advaita Vedanta is such. So let me begin this conversation with why do we need Advaita Vedanta in the modern day and times that we live?
Om Shri Chinmay Sadgurave Namaha. Om Shri Adi Shankaracharya Namaha. Hari Om Namaskar. This is going to be interesting because so far I've only had informal conversations with her. But you all are going to make me formal. That is good. Why Vedanta? I remember a conversation I had with you, Shweta, where you explained to me about the two, the left brain and the right brain, and further, the L1, the L2, the R1 and the R2. The left brain, the L1 always talks about what? The L2 talks about how. The R2 talks about who, but the R1 always asks why. Am I right?
Absolutely, Amma.
So, the first thing that struck me as an R1 dominant personality, which she has mapped and found, is the question why. So, anything that I do, I will ask the question why, and that is not just me. Every child asks the question why. Vedanta says, without seeing a prayojana, mando api na pravartate. Even a foolish person will not do anything without a purpose. So, the fundamental question for any and every human being, whether you believe in God, you don't believe in God, is why? What is the purpose of human life? The question is not what is the purpose of any other thing. My very life, why am I born? What is the purpose of human life? That should be extremely fundamental. I remember a person got into a train and the ticket collector came and asked him, "Ki ticket dikhao, show me your ticket." He says, "I don't have it." He says, "What? How is it possible?" "Okay, which station did you get in from?" He says, "I don't know." "Okay, where do you want to get down?" He says, "I don't know." Then the ticket collector asked him, "Why are you in the train?" He said, "I don't know." And what would you call such a person? आप विचार करो. Something is wrong here. If we are born, we are in this human birth, from where have I come? I don't know. What is the goal of my life? Where will I go? I don't know. Why am I living? What? I don't know. Something is wrong. Do you agree? So Vedanta it's important for everyone, irrespective of who you are. It asks two fundamental questions. Number one is, what is the goal of human life?
Beautiful.
And what happens is, normally what people think, if I had asked you 20 years back, 25 years, 30 years back, what is the goal of your life? You would have said to become a doctor. You ask someone else, what is the goal of your life? To become an engineer. Especially young people have all these typical. That is a professional goal. The question is, what is the goal of what? Human life. And if you say the professional goal is the goal of human life, then the day you become a doctor, you should die. Because you've achieved the goal of your life. But no one dies. No one wants to die. Even though you've sort of achieved. So therefore, what is the goal? Whether you are a doctor or an engineer or whatever, what do you actually want? What did you become a doctor for? You will naturally say, knowing you very well, you'd say, to serve people. But why do you want to serve people? Why? When I serve someone, I become happy. So at the end of the day, if I ask you a question, why are you here? Why have you come for this, listening to this conversation between both of us? What will you say? जानने के लिए, कुछ समझने के लिए, to know something, to understand something? Not really so. In the process of understanding, supposing I bore you to death, or you become extremely unhappy, you will all slowly walk out. Is it a fact or not? So what have we come here for? To become happy. To be happy is the single goal of every human being. It doesn't matter who you are. When I ask someone, and I said, everyone's goal is that, says, no, I want to be unhappy. There's one lady who said that. I said, why do you want to be unhappy? She said, when I tell my sad story and about my unhappiness, I share it with my friends, they sympathize with me, and I become happy. So what is the goal? To be happy. No one in this whole world ever wants to be unhappy. That is one goal. So when we say we have different goals, it is wrong. We do not have different goals. We have one goal. Then we say, okay, if it's one goal, then everyone is happy sometime. I hope you're happy right now. You said, so you've achieved the goal of your life? Wow. But you say, no, I have not. If happiness is the single goal, we've been happy 100,000 times. Then how can we say we have not achieved the goal? So then Vedanta asks, what is that happiness that you seek? Do you want to be happy today, tomorrow, or day after?
Forever.
We want to be happy today, tomorrow, and ever after. So the happiness we want is what? Nitya Ananta Sukha. Supposing here you have this much happiness, someone else there's more happiness, you will go there. Is it true or not? I'm not going to feel bad about it. You will go there. So all of us have this one single goal. You may say, I am not spiritual, I have nothing to do with God, I don't believe in anything, but your goal and my goal and her goal and everyone's goal is what? Nitya Ananta Sukha Prapti. To attain eternal and infinite happiness. And that is what Vedanta is saying.
Beautiful.
So no one can deny that you are here in this world. You have to. Why Vedanta? Why? How can you not have Vedanta? How can I live a life without asking this fundamental question? I hope you all agree. Yes. There's no question that how can I live a life not knowing why I am here? So Vedanta is very relevant. We will come to the second question, fundamental question, as we go along with this dialogue.
Thank you so much. That was really beautifully explained. We need forever happiness. I'm a neurologist, and I joke and I say I'm a brain plumber. I fix broken brains. But that's not a very exciting day job. That is the reason why I'm here talking to Amma as a side job. No, I'm just joking. What is very important is to understand that psychology deals with mind. And then psychiatrists are the people who give medications or treat mental problems or mental diseases. Right now, the statistics are very glaring, Amma. They say 1 in 3 people is anticipated to go through mental challenge or a mental illness. Currently, as we speak, United States of America is going through a second pandemic. And that pandemic is of loneliness. There was a study which was done. 2 groups of people who were asked to stay 15 minutes. There was one group of people who was given a choice to stay 15 minutes with their thoughts versus giving 70 millivolts of electric current. And both the groups, and the second group, of course, had men, and the first group had women, both the groups, 70% of them chose to have electric current rather than to sit with the mind. This is absolutely fascinating for me. And there comes the question, what is brain? What is mind? I can remove the brain, I can put it on table, literally. I can do a dissection of the brain. And there are so many new imaging methods. I can see, look at the brain, the functions, the parts of it. But what has really not been understood, and the scientists are also trying to understand that, is mind. Where is the mind? The flow of the thoughts. What is really happening in that? And let's ask Amma that question. From the Advaita Vedanta perspective, what is mind?
Never mind. That they don't know.
That's a good one, Amma.
It's okay. We are here to answer that. Now, first of all, the difference between the brain and the mind, normally we think they are the same thing. It's not the same thing. As you very rightly said, the brain is a gross, perceptible organ, right? And the mind is thoughts. So, just as through a radio, in the good old days we had radios, radio waves, through the radio, bring out sound waves as sound waves, right? So it's an instrument which manifests the radio waves into a sound wave. Similarly, the brain is an instrument which manifests our inner, vasanas, if you call them, or inner thoughts or inner personality or whatever, into thoughts. So what we perceive our thoughts with our mind. We do not perceive thoughts through our eyes or ears, and that is why in Vedanta we call brain as part of the sthula sharira, the gross body, and the mind as a part of the sukshma sharira, the subtle body. What is gross? Gross, which is that which is perceived by our 5 senses, is called gross. And that which cannot be perceived by our 5 senses is called what? Subtle. So you can't see the mind. You say, no, I can see an angry person. You only see the facial expressions. You have never seen anger. Can you see anger? You can't. You cannot touch anger. You cannot smell anger. You cannot. The effect it will have on the body is all that you perceive. So that is only reflected in that. So we have never seen our own mind or anyone else's mind with our eyes or ears or anything like that, because it's part of the subtle. So what does the mind have? Mind has thoughts. Why is the mind important to be discussed? Why is it important to discuss about the mind? In a Advaita, from the Advaita standpoint, from the Vedanta standpoint, the mind is extremely important. Extremely important means I cannot even begin to tell you how important. We live our life in our mind. Mind is nothing but thoughts. Thoughts flowing, every experience from your birth to the death, every experience, even what you are experiencing right now is happening where?
Mind.
Whose mind? Important is what? Whose mind? Your mind, my mind. The world will not exist were it not for a thought of it in your mind. That important. What is this? This is a flower, right? Where do you see it? You say it's on the table. Where do you see the table? On the hall. But if you do not have a thought of the flower in your mind, for you, the flower does not exist. Is it true or not? So, all experiences are happening. So, unhappiness is where?
Mind.
Whose mind? My mind. Happiness is where? Even Advaita Vedanta Chintan is happening where? Whose mind? All existence. We say, in the past, the Rishi Munis or ancient, this ancient, whatever you call as ancient, happens where? It's a memory in your mind now. Is it true or not? That there was a past, you cannot prove without a thought of it in your mind now. Is it true or not? That there will be a future is only an imaginary thought in your mind now. Is it true or not?
True.
Imagine this. I asked you how old you are. You are so many years. This is only a thought in your mind, right?
Very true.
Everything. So how important is thoughts and how important is the mind? It's the cause of all joys, all sorrow. Mana eva manushyanam karanam. Not bandha moksha, for sukha, dukkha, bandha moksha. You name it, it's all the mind. How important is mind for anything, whether it is Advaita Vedanta or...
Absolutely. And it's
So
very interesting.
therefore, continue.
It's very, very interesting. We never say I mind. Do we ever say I mind? Do we ever say I brain? We always say my mind, my brain. So there is some difference or a distance, let's put it that way, which is happening. So I am not my mind.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Vedanta definitely says that. Definitely says that. We can move on to the next question.
Absolutely. So very beautifully said. I hope everybody's mind is in the Bharat Bhavan, because minds can travel everywhere. And I was talking to a couple of Gujaratis. They said mind is here. Stomach. I'm also Gujarati, by the way.
So am I.
So are you. So I understand brain. So I'm going to talk a little bit about from the perspective of there are 3 fundamental brain parts that we have. As I'm talking to you, the same thing is happening in your brain. And I like to show the brain. So there are 3 fundamental parts. One part is called brain stem, where I'm breathing, where my heart is beating. Everybody's heart is beating and all of you are breathing, otherwise we'll have to call the ambulance. So that is the brain stem. Then we move a little bit up there, all the emotions are happening, and that is called the limbic system or the emotional system. That is a little bit up towards the middle side of the brain. And then there is the fundamental prefrontal cortex or the frontal cortex. The limbic system is driven to protect us. In the good old days where there used to be hunting happening, the lions and tigers used to be the threat, right? In today's day, what is the threat? Suddenly a boss's email you open in the morning, or a WhatsApp message from somebody who comes, I'm not going to talk to you. These are all the modern day threats. What is the job of the limbic lobe? It is to protect. It is to conserve, to preserve. And that is the reason why it runs through something called fight, flight, fear, or freeze. How many of you before the exams are fearful? I see a lot of youngsters. You do fear, right? You do go fear the night before you don't sleep because, or suddenly the question paper comes and you're frozen. There is freeze. That is where this is happening. But what is very important is the prefrontal cortex, where amazing things are happening. One of them is understanding the difference between what is good and bad, attuned communications, vision of the future, understanding of even the Advaita Vedanta. All the higher order intellect is happening in the prefrontal cortex. Now, unfortunately, in today's world, and this is what the latest research says, majority of the people, Amma, are in this limbic loop. Literally, I call it the limbic trap. It is like, all the time I'm only protecting myself with fight, flight, fear, or freeze. Would you please explain us from the Advaitic Vedanta perspective the solution to come out of this limbic trap?
Interesting. One of the things that we should all be taught right from school. In fact, I would think it should become a compulsory subject in schools and colleges, is how to think.
Beautiful. Not what to think.
What to think is important, but more important is how to think. And what happens is that, as you very rightly said, we need freeze, fight, fear, etc. It's all for our protection. It reminds me of a book by Gavin de Becker called The Gift of Fear, where he called fear as a gift given by God so that we protect ourselves. If we don't use that, it's a problem. There's a snake, and if you're not scared of it and it's a cobra, you might do something which is harmful, but since there's a fear, you will protect yourself. But where does the problem come? The trap is not in this God-given gift.
Absolutely.
The trap is when the fear does not allow us to think, does not allow to act proactively, what is to be done after that. So, how to think is very, very, very important. Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji himself says, avichara kruto bandha vicharena nivartate. So we get into this trap because of lack of, as you said, the prefrontal thinking. The higher order thinking. All the higher order thinking comes from the prefrontal lobe, as you said. So we need to be taught how to think. And Advaita Vedanta or Shastras, the Upanishads, the Gita, all the texts of Bhagwan Shankaracharya and all the great masters, even our Santa Sahitya and all other Ramayana, Bhagavad, Mahabharata, all the ancient scriptures, they actually, if we study them, we learn how to think. Very interesting. No one reads those for the how to think, but that's a byproduct. If we really learn all these texts, automatically it's it's a wonderful discipline of how to think. Now, how to come out of it? How, as you said.
Absolutely.
Now, most of this is happening because of lack of thinking. The avichara part is either is not thinking at all. We see a lot of harm that is happening. People tell me that before I got married, I knew that this person was not nice. And then the logic is, then how did you go into this relationship? So I just did not think. So I knew I did not think doesn't make sense. So either incomplete thinking, no thinking, or ulta thinking, wrong type of thinking. I often give this as a joke. A teacher asked the students. He wanted to teach the bad effects of alcohol. So in two glasses, one glass had plain water and some insects were put and they were moving around. Another glass, insects were put, the insects died. So the teacher asked the students, what do you learn from that? one bright child said, whenever you have insects in your stomach, drink alcohol. This is called what? Viparita thinking. And I'm telling you, these are the things why, because we are trapped into this fear and the freeze. We either don't think at all, or we think not sufficiently. There is such a, one is the physical laziness, and the second is the laziness of thinking. And I am telling you, lot of us fall into this category. In fact, we have an allergy to deep thinking and thinking on a topic.
Or overthinking.
Overthinking.
That is also one of the problems.
Biggest
of the current
problems.
Times. Stress, modern day stress, overthinking. I generally ask my patients, in this 0 to 10, how stressed are you? And everybody is going 8. And why? I say, my mind cannot stop thinking.
You see, so how to think? What?
Absolutely.
That is to be learned. And Advaita Vedanta is a very powerful tool which teaches us how to think in the right way, and how we can stop this cycle. It's so easy, it's not even difficult. We can go into examples, but it's so easy.
Absolutely. Amma, I'm going to come to the gross brain, because brain really fascinates me. 100 billion neurons, trillions of synapses. If you take a small pinhead, can you guess the total number of the brain cells that a single pinhead holds? 70 to 80,000 brain cells, 2.5 petabytes of memory, and 1 petabyte is 1,000,000 gigabytes. I live in Dubai. If you want to extract all the memory capacities of the brain, you will have to stack up an entire Burj Khalifa, and still the memory capacity would not have finished. When we talk of the brain areas, it is very fascinating. People have tried to map different areas, and I get reminded of this Amma patient. I was actually on a neurology duty. I was not on the neurology duty call. I was on a psychiatry duty call. And they called me and said, you have a patient for psychiatry. This is, I'm telling, way back when I was a resident doctor in Mumbai. So I said, okay, I'm going to come. And this patient comes. The patient's husband frantically says, we were traveling in a train. We were going from Nasik to Mumbai. And this person was sitting, I was sitting here, my wife was sitting, and suddenly, my wife is shouting. And what is she shouting? She says, somebody has put the hand over my lap. So she's telling, that's your hand. The husband is telling the wife, that's your hand. She says, no, it is the hand of the next door person who's sitting next to me. And so he got panicked and said, what happened to my wife? So they brought him to the emergency room. And actually, that was her hand, but her brain's area forgot to recognize as it was her hand. In our language, we call it agnosia, which means there are certain parts of the brain which are related to some functions. But very interesting, Amma, is, and scientists across the globe have failed to understand where is self-awareness. They could map where my hand is moving. They could map what is happening in terms of face recognition. One of the wives came and said, I cannot recognize the husband's face. It's a true story. It was a patient, again, of that particular area of the brain was not functional. But self-awareness, Amma, from the perspective of Advaita Vedanta, how does this relate? Because it is super fascinating for me that there is no area marked for that particular thing.
Luckily, the brain doesn't decide who we are. This I notion is a very, very fundamental notion. And the very fact that they have not discovered it in the brain, a location in the brain
Absolutely.
from where it emerges,
no location.
Itself proves Advaita Vedanta. How? Because, very, very simple, the brain is an object of my awareness.
Beautiful.
I am the experiencer, I am the one who experiences the brain. So the experience is always different from the experience. The experiencer is different from the experience. So therefore, you will never find the I location in the brain. Because I am the one who knows the brain, who experiences the brain, who understands the brain. The same thing as you pointed for the mind.
Absolutely.
So I am the one who knows the mind. And therefore, you will never be able to probably
Not until yet, not yet.
Never.
Or never.
Because subject and object are different.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the brain will not have the I notion.
Beautiful.
I know the brain, but the brain will not have this I notion.
Beautiful.
So who is this I? Now, before we go into this, there is the mind, as you said, the limbic mind, and the other is the mind which is the higher order mind. In Vedanta, we call it what? Mana and Buddhi. The same Mana we divide into more into Mana and Buddhi. And Bhagavan also in all his wisdom has done that. The heart is here and the brain is here. Is here. So we say, yes, emotions are important. They are the driving force. They are like the fuel in a car. But the car should be driven not by the fuel, but by the driver with the steering wheel in their hand. This is a story which is this one man was going on a horse. The horse was driving, running, and he was clinging to the horse, almost hanging from the horse. Another person standing by and watching him said, "Arey, where are you going?" He says, "Don't ask me, ask the horse." Similarly, for us also, the mind is taking us everywhere. हम मनमानी करते रहते, बुद्धिमानी नहीं करते हैं.
Well said.
We always do. So manmani is the limbic brain. Buddhimani is the prefrontal. This. So therefore, Vedanta realization is going to happen only in the buddhi and not in the manas, in the mind. The seat of thinking, of higher order thinking, is the intellect.
Absolutely.
And not the mind, as we understand.
Absolutely.
Mind and intellect both are thoughts. That's a different thing. But we understand mind as just the one which, the fight, fright, flight, fear, freeze, this mode and all. Now, the awareness, you said self-awareness, that also is only possible, understanding of it is only possible in the intellect.
Very true.
Not by the limbic brain.
Very true, Amma. And scientists have always been baffled about the dreams. Sigmund Freud and so many people have written about it, and dreams have always been perplexing. So, of course, we as neuroscientists know that I'm awake and I know all the things. When I fall off to sleep, I know that. And yes, in that sleep, there is also dream. But Amma, I have heard a couple of times from you before as well. Advaita Vedanta talks about the 3 states, and very clearly, very beautifully. Would you like to please elaborate on that?
Jagrat, Swapna and Shushupti. I think all of you are aware of that. You are all in the Jagrat Avastha. No, the one who is not in the Jagrat Avastha did not answer anyways. The Jagrat Avastha, every one of us in the Jagrat Avastha. And some of us keep going from this Jagrat into a daydreaming state also. So there is no such thing that from the time you were here, you could have gone into some mental state which is not aware, you're not aware. Even though these are in-between states, daydreaming and all are in between. Then the Swapna Avastha is when you are completely unaware of this outer world and you're only in the mental world. It can happen in the daytime also is what I'm trying to say, but completely unaware of the outer world and you're just in the mental world, in the daydreaming to that extent that sometimes when accidents happen or something, they're driving, their eyes are not seeing what is right there in front of them. Not only accidents, so many things like that where you're there, but you don't see. Eyes are open, everything is there, but still you're not seeing because the conscious mind is not there behind the eyes, so you don't see. So that state where only the mind is, projections of the mind alone are there, is the Swapna Avastha. I mean, that also shuts down. It's like a counter in a shop. So you're open, or a bank. The bank is open for transaction. So all the transactions happen, Jagrat Avastha. Something is taken, something given, money given, taken. Then the bank, after office hours, doesn't have outside transactions. But inside they, all the things they sort out, all the accounts for the day and everything, everything is then, so that is the Swapna Avastha, where inside everything is sorted out. And then finally they close down that also, they lock the door and they go away. So at that time, that's the Sushupti Avastha. But interestingly, what Vedanta says is that all these three belong to the aham, the I, the ego. And it is not the state of the Atma, the self. That we can discuss also in this. So the Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti, all these three states, they are my states. Okay, I am the owner. Right now I say I am awake, I am listening. In the dream, we say, when we come out of the dream, I dreamt. When we fall asleep and we come out of the sleep, you say, I experienced deep sleep. I enjoyed my sleep. I was sound asleep. So this I, is it different or the same? Obviously, it's the same. I was the one who slept. I was the one who dreamt. I was the one who had the deep sleep state. I am now talking about it. They are not different. It's the same entity which is there in all the three states. Beautiful. So Vedanta says, who is this one? Focus on that, which is there as a substratum to all the three states.
Beautiful.
Who is this I?
But sometimes that I in certain diseases is lost. For example, Alzheimer's disease, which is about memory dysfunction, right? Where the person often forgets who is he or she, you know? So there is the question of that identity, of my self-identity. And often in our daily lives also, we take up many identities, right? I mean, I can be a doctor, I can be a daughter, I can be a shishya. So many identities in that form also keeps changing. So Amma, my question is, what is that one fundamental identity that we are talking about in the context of Advaita Vedanta?
Very interesting. Am I one or am I many? Question. Am I one or am I many? Because you're sitting in this oneness dialogue, we'll say one. That is, am I one or am I many? I am a mother, as she said, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a XYZ. So what do we say? I am. With respect to, I have different identities. This is the important point to understand. What?
In reference to.
With reference to all our laukika, vyavaharika, worldly identities are always with respect to. This is an important thing to this. So they are assumed identities with respect to. With respect to a husband, the lady is a wife. With respect to the son, she is a mother. With respect to a brother, she is a sister. You understand? So all worldly relations are only what? With respect to. I am hungry. That is your identity with respect to?
Correct.
I don't think I should have reminded anyone of that.
The mind would straight away go there.
Go there. So it's always, I am unhappy. This is also an identity with respect to what? The mind. So all these identities. But there is one I which is also, and this is such an interesting thing, this I, which is saying, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a sister. So what is happening when it's saying I am a mother, then later on it's saying I am a daughter. It gives up the identity with that particular relation and becomes that. When I say I'm hungry, what am I doing? I'm identifying with the body and saying I'm hungry. Then with my sorrow, what do? I give up my identification with that body and then I'm saying, oh, I'm happy. So what am I doing? This entity has this ability to give up and take on identities. So that which is giving up and taking on is more fundamental than that identity which is, meaning it's the fundamental one, the one that is doing this job is a fundamental one.
Beautiful.
Okay. who is this I that takes on and gives up relations, takes on identities and gives up identities? That is where we have to probe and find out.
Beautiful. I think we can open up a couple of questions from the audience for Amma in the context of Advaita Vedanta. Please raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Talked about the consciousness,
Yes.
the 3 stage of consciousness. I would like to know there is a 4th state of consciousness, is Turiya Avastha. So one is a Jagrit Avastha, second is a Shushupti, third is Swapna Avastha. So Jagrit, you are aware of the things happening. Sleeping, you don't know what's happening. And in Swapna, it's neither real, you are not aware of anything. So there is another state which is Turiya Avastha. I think that's a meditative state of mind. Can you highlight on that also?
Turiya is not another state of consciousness. Turiya is the underlying state of consciousness. तो चौथी अवस्था बोलते हैं 4, the 4th, not as different from the 3. There is no Turiya as a separate, apart. Otherwise, that is Dvaita. No? There is one Turiya Avastha and then there are these 3 states. No. The Turiya Avastha is where it is the fundamental, it is the very basis. I will have to go into a little of Vedanta, pure Vedanta, to explain this point a little bit. We say this Turiya is nothing but Satchidananda Atma. Okay? That. Na anta prajna, na bahish prajna, na ubhayata prajna, etc., etc. And it is said what? Shantam Shivam Advaitam. Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Sa Vigneyaha. So Turiya is called what? Atma. Chaturtham is what? Nothing but Atma. And what is that Atma? Advaitam. Shantam, Shivam, Advaitam. It is nothing but Advaita. Okay? So 4th is called 4th just to eliminate or negate the other 3. Not to say this is the 4th. It is to eliminate. Otherwise, what will happen? The Jagrat identity, the waking identity, we will think is the real identity. The dream identity, the assumed identity will be considered as the real identity. So to negate these 3 identities, we call it the 4th. But it is not a separate 4th state which is talked about at all. Vedanta does not say it is 4th as separate and other than these 3 states. I hope this is answered.
Beautiful. One more question. Yes. Beautiful question, Amma.
Yes. So now the word consciousness.
Yes,
has
consciousness
just
we
come
wanted to
up.
bring up
Yes.
anyways.
We
So,
had talked about it.
yes.
Let's now bring up this word consciousness.
A lot of
Atma.
misunderstandings as well, so let's
Yeah.
clarify all of it.
Sometimes I have a little objection to this English word consciousness. Because with this word consciousness, no subconscious, unconscious, all these other words are this. So what Vedanta says consciousness is not something called unconscious, subconscious, and no consciousness, and these are very different. I will have to go into a little fundamentals to explain this. Atma is Sat Chit Ananda. That is what is explained as Vedanta.
Absolutely.
You have. Now, normally Chit is translated as consciousness, Chaitanya. Sometimes I just prefer the English, the Sanskrit word, because this confusion is not there in Sanskrit. When you talk this, but all this conscious, unconscious word problem comes only with the language. Now, Chaitanya, the meaning of consciousness is not like, okay, let's go a little more fundamental. Does this have consciousness? How many of you say yes? Most of you will say no, it does not have consciousness. Does this have consciousness? Everyone will think yes. I'm speaking, I'm conscious, I'm aware. Does this have consciousness? No, it doesn't have this. So this normal understanding is what? This is inert and this is conscious. This is the normal understanding that all of us have.
True.
So we have a lot of conscious beings sitting over here. Yes?
True.
You are conscious?
100%.
I am conscious. All of us conscious. And this is what? Inert, jada, unconscious. This is what our normal is. Sometimes we also become unconscious. So that is different. Now, we will have to bring this concept of life. The example is electricity, bulb, filament, and the light in the filament. Let's take this example. There is electricity, there is a bulb, there is light, and there is a filament. I'm talking only of light, not sunlight, but the light in the bulb, okay?
Right.
Now, can I define light as the manifestation of electricity in the bulb through the medium of the filament? Can I do that?
Yes.
Light is the manifestation of electricity in the bulb
Through the medium of filament.
Now,
Beautiful.
what is life? Life is the manifestation of Chaitanya, Atma, consciousness in the body through the medium of the Sukshma Sharira.
Beautiful.
It is the manifestation in the gross body through the medium of the Sukshma Sharira. So Sukshma Sharira has a special ability of reflecting consciousness as life, as awareness, as knowledge. So therefore I'm saying, I'm aware. Don't we say that? So this awareness is not consciousness. It's a reflection of consciousness.
Right.
Okay? So the light in the bulb is like life. So wherever what happens is, what do we say? There is no consciousness here. Let us say, you take a fused bulb. When the bulb is fused, what happens? Does the electricity disappear? No. Electricity is still there, but the medium
is absent.
Because the medium is absent, what happens? You don't experience the light and the electricity, but it is still there. Okay. So similarly, when normal language of this is conscious, we are talking about reflection of consciousness as awareness, etc., etc. We are not talking about as Chaitanya Atma. Chaitanya Atma, it manifests in this medium. Now, for example, charcoal is there, it's made of carbon. Diamond is also made of carbon. But there's a lot of difference between these two materials. What is the difference between the two materials? Charcoal does not have the ability to reflect light, whereas diamond has.
And it's expensive.
Similarly, this gross body is made of the Panchamahabhutas. The subtle body is also made of the Panchamahabhutas. But this is gross Panchamahabhutas. This is subtle Panchamahabhutas. Subtle Panchamahabhutas have the ability to reflect this Chaitanya Atma. So, what we normally talk of consciousness is only reflected consciousness and awareness. We are not talking about that Atma, which is reflected in this medium, which is the mind, etc., etc.
And I think that's what Swamiji was asking us. Is consciousness a reflection or a possibility of the brain's function as a manifestation of the brain's functions?
Absolutely. So, therefore, consciousness by itself, the electricity, someone says, I want direct experience of electricity. What will you tell them? Take your hand and
plug it in.
And you will get what? Sakshatkar. Absolute Sakshatkar of what? Electricity. You will get absolute. You will get. Now, so how do you do that? And that is why we say ki you want Atma Sakshatkar, you want the awareness of the self. So what do? So all the equipment that is there, what do? You shut them. You can't. Can you stop breathing?
Not at all.
You're not a Ramana Maharshi. He did that. He could do that. He had that Purva Janma Yoga Samskars or something where he shut down. He says, okay, death, I want to find everything's gone, and still I am there. You and I can't do that. So therefore, what we understand is that consciousness reflects as life. So when, it's a very beautiful story. Bhagwan Raman Maharshi was approached by one of his devotees and said, I want to see God. Can you show me God? Bhagwan said, I will show you, but you will not be able to see. He said, but why don't you try? At least try, no, and show. Maybe I will be able to see. Then Bhagwan Raman Maharshi did like this. The Shishya asked, but why are you moving your finger? He says, see, I told you. I will show you God, but you only will see my
fingers.
He's saying, because of what is this finger moving?
Beautiful.
It's because of the life. And what is this life happening? With what consciousness is this life happening? Why is this life happening in you? So that is never seen. So we only are able to see what the outer Nama Rupa Jagat. We are not able to see that inner Chaitanya Atma at all.
In fact, Amma, as doctors also, we have to certify deaths, right? So when I was coming here, so we had this patient where we had to say brain dead. And then that is for organ harvest. And generally when we have to say that a person is dead is when the heart stops functioning. And when the brain stops functioning but the heart is still intact, there's nothing happening in the brain's functions, that's brain death. But it never occurs to us, despite being every day with the life and death, what is really happening? As the person is dying, as the bulb is gone, right? I think from your example, the filament is gone. It's not there. And possibly also the bulb is broken. The bulb is also an instrument. It's also not there. But what is happening to the electricity? So that Sukshma Sharira, what you talked about, or the Sukshma part of the 5 elements, which you alluded to, what is really happening, right? It's very fundamental and very interesting to understand.
Okay. There's a bucket of water. And it's put in the sun. What will happen? Thus,
reflection.
Supposing there is no clouds or anything, you have a reflection. And then you throw away the water. Is the light still there? Yes. Is the reflection there?
Yes.
No. Reflection is not there because the water is gone. So, that's why when a person dies, you say, he kicked the bucket. You understand? Kick the bucket means what? The water has gone, reflection medium has gone. Sukshma Sharira has gone out of the body, Sthul Sharira is still there. Imagine the English phrase, what? Kick the bucket. This example must have been there, this Vedic example even in the... Kick the bucket is what they say. He kicked the bucket means what? Pani chala gaya. The reflection is not there anymore. So life is not there, but the Atma is still there. So does this have Atma? Next question. Does this have consciousness? Yes. Atma, consciousness is there even in this. Beautiful. It does not have a reflecting medium as life. And therefore it does not have thoughts. It does not have... If it had, supposing it had life and it starts moving, everyone will get scared. They'll say, ghost aya.
No, they will say, Amma, you can do something. You have some special powers.
Yeah. Or how is it possible? Because there is no Sukshma Sharira in this. And since there is no Sukshma Sharira over here, what will happen? There is no life. This is not going to start talking. It is not going to answer. It's not going to do anything. And we say it is Jada. It has got nothing. But it has got Chaitanya. Atma is there all pervading.
Beautiful.
It does not have a Sukshma Sharira, but its Chaitanya Atma is all pervading. And therefore, because it is all pervading, you can manifest it anywhere and everywhere. A beautiful story from our Puranas. Prahlad asked his father. Father did not believe in God. He said, I am God. In fact, Hiranyakashipu, what God? I am God. This young Prahlad is saying, no, there is God. How can you say there is no God? So Hiranyakashipu says, show me where your God is. You say he is everywhere. Is he in that pillar? So Prahlad said, of course he is in the pillar. And Hiranyakashipu, just to show his disdain, kicked the pillar and Bhagwan manifested there. Why? Because Chaitanya is what? Everywhere. It can be manifested anywhere. Beautiful. With the right instrument. Electricity is there in the wire, everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So wherever you want, you can manifest it. You can just have to put the right instrument there, the right machine there or something, which it will manifest.
Beautiful.
So Chaitanya, Atma, consciousness as Atma, not as awareness or as thoughts and all of that, what we call. That's why this misunderstanding with the word consciousness.
Very true.
If we can just eliminate the word consciousness, say Chaitanya, Atma, this misunderstanding will not be there.
True. Thank you, Amma. I'm going to slightly move away a little bit to the question. When I'm sitting idle, or possibly you guys can also tell me if that is the truth for you. When I'm sitting idle doing nothing, there is a particular area in the brain which gets active for most people. It is called the default mode network, DMN. The neuroscientists have found that, and it's very, very interesting to know that area. It is all self-referential. Essentially, what did I do yesterday? What did I do 2 days back? Oh, what am I going to do tomorrow, day after? So it's always thinking about self. It is always self-reflecting or self-referencing. And most of the brain scans, so my lab in Cambridge does a couple of scannings for people who are spiritual saints and meditators and all. What we see is this default mode network is quiet, is deactivated. And that's why possibly they can stay in the present, because I'm not ruminating about the past or I'm not thinking about the future. I am in the state of present or the being. So Amma, I want to ask you, how do we do this? It's default, right? So we need to undefault it, because I want to experience the present. I want to know that present. So please guide us in that regards.
All brains work in patterns. There are what is called habitual patterns that we have formed.
True.
One
and very
experiment,
early, childhood itself.
Right, childhood. These are formed in the present time, and we've come with these patterns from the past. That also. How much of a pattern thinking we do, you can, right this second we can prove. I'm going to say one word. Please say the first word comes to your mind. Don't think about anything right now. Don't plan anything. Just say the first word that comes to your mind. All of us? Ready? Boy. Come on, say it loudly. Up. Morning. Are you understanding how patterned the thinking is? I just proved it right now.
Absolutely.
Did we all plan to say it together? Did we? No fun. Now you understand how patterned it is? Our brains are like that. This is how we learn. This is how we understand, interact, react. Now, these are good things also. Nothing wrong with this sort of a thinking of this. But supposing it becomes like that, the minute I see a particular person, then immediately anger. Supposing, then the problem is there.
True.
Or you look at someone, they have done nothing and we get irritated. Why? It's a pattern. 100 times I have been with this person. Many of our conversations are patterned. There's a lovely book which I read when I was in college called Knots by R.D. Lang. A typical conversation at home, the parents will tell the child, study. So the child will say, no, I don't want to study. Saying, if you don't study, you will fail. So the child says, I don't mind failing. Then if you fail, you will not get a degree. It doesn't matter. If you don't get a degree, you won't get a job. You'll become... So, and then they go into a typical... How many of our conversations at home go back into the same type of... Especially arguments and all that. No? It starts anywhere and ends up in the same loop.
Very true.
So this is... We all are into this sort of a... Patterned behavior, way of thinking... This. So therefore, what happens is that when Vasana Kshaya happens to an extent, when the Vasana is very strong, when the person is absolutely angry, you tell him don't get angry, he'll get more angry. It happens to so many people, no? Especially, when they are so angry, you say don't get angry. That time you can't tell them. Or if you are very quiet and when that person is angry, they get more angry. Why? Nothing is happening to you, I'm only getting angry and all. So there is this. So when the mind is relatively calm and, that's why sadhana has a very important role. Vasana Kshaya, that mind which is relatively empty, relatively free, or sits with itself. What I think neuroscience calls is metacognition. The
Thinking
ability
about
to
thinking.
think about your own mind, introspection, atmanirikshanam. It's very, very important. Why do I behave like that? Why is this person really irritating, or is something inside me which is making that person irritated? And most of the time, this hurt feeling is a very important. This is what happens. We go into this mode because
Absolutely.
freeze and hurt, and these are all patterns which we have. For example, I mean, if I do like this, nothing is going to happen. I feel good about it. But if I have a boil
No.
and I do this, what will happen? Immediately. So whenever the mind is reacting, I must ask myself, what is wrong here? Not what is wrong there.
Very true.
What happens is, if something is there, immediately our thing is, you said this, so I got angry. Our mind is always in the reactive stage. So whenever there is reaction, it is going to be in the same pattern and this loop only. So when it's the active state, it will remain in the present.
So that is the present.
That is the thing.
That's the thing.
So when this happens, when you're doing this, what happens? Now when I do I should ask what something is wrong here, not that you are doing something wrong.
Correct. Very true.
This hand, supposing this hand comes like that, and this. So what we say, oh, why did you do this? But why did you react so much? Normally you would not have reacted with this because there was a boil here, you reacted. So my whole effort should be get myself cured here instead of telling this not to be happening. So we tell always the word, now why are you doing this to me? Why this is happening? So this reaction and this default mode is because of this reactionary mind rather than an active mind.
Beautiful. So this reminds me of my own personal challenge that I had, and Amma, of course, knows about it. So I had this childhood friend, very, very dear childhood friend, 20 years of relationship, almost like a family member, and suddenly she just is out of my life. Nowadays, they call it ghosting, right? In the modern day, there is all right swipes and then ghosting, which is happening. Suddenly, people just disappear out of your life. And it's very painful, So for me, it was a really, really emotionally, deeply hurt state, the pattern, and it was very, very difficult for me to come out of it. And luckily, I was visiting United States, and there was an experiment which was going on. So the doctor said, why don't you scan your brain? Because I was really upset, I was all the time ruminating, not in the default mode network, continuously ruminating what could have gone wrong, Why did this person, and the first thought is not about me. Why did this person did this to me? Why did this person do that? Why did she do that? It was always about that. So they took me into the scanner. We did something called the functional MRI. So MRI is like a little big machine, and functional MRI lights up the area. And the area which got lit up for me is called the ventral tegmental area. And the professor called me, and he was shocked, and he said, what happened? And I told this story. And he said, this is the area, this ventral tegmental area, which gets lighted up for heroin addicts. So I'm like, okay, I have never known what heroin is also. I've never taken heroin, which means the attachment which I had, the emotional dependency which I had was equivalent to that of an addiction, Amma. So this led me completely to a very interesting state of my mind. I said, oh my God, I have to defriend, not de-addiction. I have to start doing defriending. So from the perspective of Advaita Vedanta, and of course I took a lot of your help, right? So when you're talking about this pattern, this deep emotional disturbances that we go through, and I still remember, I've traveled with her so many times, and early in the morning, she takes classes on meditation. And I'm always absent, and I tell her I'm horizontally meditating, and I'm happy doing that. And for years, she did not tell me anything. But when this happened, it's like a phone guru type of a thing. So I called her, and I hope she remembers that day, saying, please, acute need, I'm in real need of meditation now. So that was what happened. So Amma, tell us more about, and there's a lot of meditation techniques. There is transcendental meditation, and there's dancing meditation, and there's all kinds of meditations that we see, right? But I think from the perspective of thinking, I think what you led me to do was Advaita Vedantic meditation. Why don't you explain us a little more? And thank you for coming into my life and saving me from that emotional pain. And do you guys agree that it's really painful? How many of you have gone through that? Lot of people. Yes, absolutely. Sama.
Vedanta, first of all, Gita and all our scriptures explain what we normally call love is normally attachment. So what you had with your friend, as you said, this dependency, that, and every time I meet a youngster and they say, I want to talk with you alone.
You know the story.
So it is 90% of the time it is about some relationship, the attachment and what they are going through and all. It's like a typical, I mean, almost,
You can predict, you can
you
preempt.
predict, yeah. From the face you see the person, you know this is the problem. So attachment. So any love which is an attachment, like what is an attachment? Where there is dependency, where there is a lot of possessiveness and demanding and jealousies and stress and fear, you know, that the person may leave me and the person will not be with me. And I think we were discussing today only in the afternoon. Can you explain that?
The attachment styles.
Attachment
Absolutely.
style.
So there was a study which was done, and this was a study in United Kingdom. There were 4 groups of infants. They were studying these babies, you know, infants. And then social behavioral scientists were talking, so they called it ABCD babies, and this experiment is 30 years old and they are still called ABCD babies. So the baby A, when was nursed, the attender would go and then leave for 2 hours. Same thing for B, would nurse and then go away for 2 hours. A, B, C, and D, the same thing happened. Now when they studied, so there were a lot of scientists who were studying in the camera the behavior and the patterns of these infants. In group A, they saw that the baby was very angry. Why did you leave me? In the
Can
group,
you just explain the 4 basic
the attachment styles, yes.
Just
So
the attachment style.
yes, in the B, I'll just quickly finish this. In the B, what happened was there were tantrums. In the C baby, there was no feeling that, oh, I think you were out because for a reason. And in the D, the baby was not demanded more. Since you were away, give me more. And this continued as attachment styles. And to date, these attachment styles are either it is secure. The second is anxious. You know, the moment you somebody is not in love with you or leaves you, that's anxious attachment. And the third one is anxious disorganized. So these are the attachment styles which we have. And modern science is trying to understand that because it helps us to go from this anxious disorganized, which is leading to the attachment, to secure attachment.
Now, many times people think that Vedanta never talks about love. No, Vedanta only talks about knowledge, jnana. And then I am a bhakti person, and no one in the world can only be, intellect. We all have emotions also and all. So how would Vedanta talk of love? And this attachment and this, how is it related? Meaning, is there a love which is not of the form of attachment? Yes. There is one fundamental love which all of us have. Zero exception again. What is most beautiful about Vedanta is that it talks always about that which is fundamental and universal. Remember that. Everything about Vedanta applies for every human being, past, present, and future. That universal is Vedanta. Self-love is the basic love. I'm not about selfish love.
Self-love.
Self-love. Vedanta says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. We all love ourselves and we love others for the sake of ourselves. We do not love anyone else for their own sake. We love them for our own sake. And what does it mean? That because that person becomes a source of happiness to me, so I love. If that person is not a source of happiness, I don't love. Now, in attachment, what happens is a very strange thing that that person gives us unhappiness. And yet we seem to be loving because we are in the expectation of happiness from them, or at one time we got happiness from them, or we still think maybe in future they will give us happiness, or we think we can somehow demand and get that happiness from them, so we cling to the person even though that person gives us sorrow. A very interesting thing is, if you see, I've asked this question many times, which is the person who has given you maximum sorrow in your life? And strangely, without knowing anyone, you will come to know that is the person you have loved the most.
Absolutely.
Interesting, no? If you love the person the most, what do you expect from them?
Joy.
Maximum happiness. But what has that person given you? Sorrow. Maximum sorrow. Why? Because that is where you had maximum expectations of happiness from an outside object other than the Atma, because the Atma is the source of all happiness. And we put that happiness onto someone else, and we wanted so much happiness, and naturally that person was not able to what? Fulfill that happiness, and it became what? A source of positive sorrow for all of us. So all this. So Atma Prem is the most beautiful prem. Is the most beautiful. Why? Because it does not have degrees. See, something is there, no? I love so much. I am madly in love. No one has such type of degrees in love with the self. I love myself so much. I'm madly in love.
Or
There's
it does
no
not
degrees.
vary.
And now I don't love. And it never. It doesn't matter what we are. I may be good, bad, ugly. I may be anything. I still love myself. Morning, afternoon, evening, it doesn't wax and wane. With people, though, it does happen. In the morning, they say, oh, I'm so blessed that this person is my husband. And by night, they say, of all the people in the world, I got this one. You know, it's happened to so many people. Best friend when we are children, and then we go worst enemy. And when they get married, I love you. And when they get divorced, same people. No one says, I love you, let's divorce. No one says that I hate you. So what happens to this love? You know, but Atma Prem is constant.
Beautiful.
And we all want, at the end of the day, see, it's a very beautiful thought. We said, na, Chaitanya manifests as life. So the Ananda aspect, Satchit Ananda aspect manifests as love.
Beautiful. So the Ananda part is the...
It's not, please remember, Sat, Chit and Ananda are not three different things. It's just the...
expression.
Expression. So that Chaitanya is very obviously seen as life. Ananda and love go together. And I'll add one more word, because it's very important to understand also. Peace also goes together. Where there is only agitation, there cannot be either Ananda or true love also. Peace has to go together with this. You ask a typical young person, what type of happiness do you want? You want dhamal happiness or shanta happiness? 99.999% will say dhamal. I don't blame them for that. Only those who have problems with that dhamal will say shanta. And all the old people who are there will all say shanta. Because by now all dhamal, they've had enough of the dhamal and they can't get dhamal anymore any which way. So they said, chalo shanti chahiye aur kuch nahi chahiye. Dhamal sab ho gaye, khatam ho gaye, baat ho gaye, dhamal. But idea is, where there is no shanti,
There cannot be.
there cannot be happiness.
Beautiful.
Ashantasya kuta
Kuta
sukham.
sukham. Beautiful.
And this Ananda manifests as this love and shanti.
Beautiful.
And when we meditate, we are able to touch this inner. So therefore, a person who is a Vedanti or a person who has realized the self, his love is the only true love that is. Because he loves everyone not because what they are, because he loves them as their own self.
Wow. So it's that same love
It's
which
that
is
Atma Prem.
reflection. Oh, beautiful.
And that is the highest love, which is the fundamental love, which will not say, today I love you, tomorrow I don't love you. Which it is there, it is just the basic, fundamental
Beautiful.
love on which every other love will depend. every other joy depends. So therefore, we have to get to this pure love.
Beautiful.
This, and how do we normally understand love and joy and all? That which lasts has greater value, of nearer to the truth and the reality.
Absolutely.
That which does not last. It's today there is love, tomorrow it's gone, day after it's somewhere else and all. Then that is
If
too,
the
it's too fickle.
Botox is botched off, the love goes away. If the Botox goes wrong.
So
absolutely.
therefore, it's important to understand that true love and lasting joy and lasting peace is what we are all searching for. And that is why even fairy stories, how do they end?
Always
and the
happy.
king and the queen lived happily
ever after.
Ever after. Supposing the story ends and the king and the queen lived happily for 1 week.
We won't read that.
That's a very sad story. What happened after 1 week? They became unhappy again. What is the point of that?
Yeah, very true.
So therefore, this love also, this fundamental love, which is different from attachment, the more we understand that, closer we go to that, our this mode that you said, na, that
yeah, the attachment, it's a seeking, addiction type of a thing goes away.
that
Absolutely.
goes away.
And Dr. David Hawkins' work has been very interesting. He has made these maps of consciousness, and particularly love comes somewhere around. So he has his own way of measurement, and it comes somewhere around 500 hertz. And beyond that is joy, peace, bliss, as you rightly mentioned, and possibly enlightenment. So it's very, very interesting to know that. Now, we as scientists always like to measure. Because whatever we can measure, we can manage. So Amma, there's a very interesting study which was there defining IQ, intelligent quotient, EQ, emotional quotient, and SQ, spiritual quotient. Now what was shown was very interesting. In IQ, if I have one brain cell and a second brain cell, they connect to each other linearly. The more the connections linearly, the better the IQ. Now, in the emotional one, the two brain cells are connected back and forth. They go back and forth, and they simultaneously also beat. That is called EQ. But in SQ, let's say there are 3 neurons or 3 brain cells. It will go from one end to the other back and forth and also simultaneously fire. We call it synchronicity. So this is what is beautiful about the spiritual quotient. So Amma, please tell us more how to progress, how to develop this spiritual quotient, and how do we do that in practical life?
I'm going to use a word that most of us don't like to this, but sadhana is important in life.
Right.
Sadhana is a very powerful tool which will help bring out all of our inner potential, if I have to say. What is sadhana? जो साधन को ट्यून एंड फाइन ट्यून करता है, that which tunes and fine tunes our instrument, sadhan, is called sadhana. We all know that if there's a machine and a car and you don't use it for 8 months, you can't use it.
Absolutely.
You have to keep it in working order.
Correct.
Then whether you want to do a racer car or it can be any small use car, but you have to keep it in working order. So therefore, this most unbelievably beautiful body, mind and intellect that Bhagavan has given us, if we don't tune and fine-tune it and bring out the potential, the best out of it, the possibility of, as you said, of this brain is so much, absolutely, of this mind is so much, the expansion of consciousness, manifested consciousness is so much, there is no limit.
It's infinite, technically.
It's infinite, technically. So therefore, they say even David Hawkins used just 4% of his brain power. Can you imagine how much we must be using? You know, when Stephen Hawkins, Stephen Hawkins used 4%. I mean, if such a brainy person must be using 4%, we must be using 0.5% of our total potential.
But the potentials is the same for all.
Is the same for all. So therefore, sadhana is an extremely important thing to tune and fine-tune our body. Now, the more this instrument is ready, the better it is, not only in the worldly sense, in the spiritual sense, even the worldly achievement. What does Vedanta say? Sadhan chatushtaya sampanna adhikari that person, his mind is completely ready and prepared and sukshma and concentrated, only can realize the Atma. So even if you want Advaita Jnanam, you have no choice but to do sadhana.
Absolutely.
To make the mind ready. Now, what you use as an instrument, you can do japa, you can do puja, you can do parayana. There is a variety, or you can do Vedanta Vichar. That is one way, but it's a difficult way. Many people say, "Nahi, hum to vichar karenge." Try and sit with the thought, "I am Brahman." Very difficult.
You would want a 70 millivolt electric current instead.
Instead, exactly. So it's difficult. So therefore, sadhana is a very, very, so meditation, etc. also will fall into that, sadhana. Most of them people say, we don't have time for sadhana. This
Yes.
is a
Common thing.
Common thing, we don't have time. So I give them this example. A woodcutter wanted to cut some trees and he was, trying. His friend said, let's go for a movie. He says, no, I have no time. I have to cut so many trees. His friend went for a movie, came back again, saw him cutting the same old tree. He says, what did you do? How come you are not managing to cut a tree? Did you take a break? He says, no, I've been cutting. How did you not manage? Let me see your axe. The axe was blunt. Now with that blunt axe, he's
Cutting.
He said, why don't you take 10 minutes out and just sharpen the axe? He says, no, I have no time. I have to do so much.
Beautiful.
So with this mind intellect, which will Advaita Vedanta or worldly life, the same mind intellect is required until and unless it has Vivek, Vairagya,
Beautiful.
or any of these Shat Sampatis, and in the worldly sense, I mean, instead of these long terms, if I just say Sukshmata, Shuddhata and Ekagrata. If this quality is not there, we are not able to perform beautifully in the world outside or in the spiritual field.
Absolutely. And the instrument also has to be healthy, right? Mind should be healthy, the body should be healthy. I mean, look at the sheer number of the diseases we as doctors are seeing. It's absolutely, people are not taking care. The social media consumption, there's no end to when you're doing the Instagram. Did you find an end to that? The posts that come? Facebook, any end that comes in? This is by design. This is neuroscience because they want you to be in that idle rhythm or doom scrolling. All the time is getting consumed there. But I think taking care of the mind, taking care of the body, taking care of the brain, and then sharpening, as am I telling, just for 10 minutes possibly. Minimum.
I call it minimum and compulsory.
Non-negotiable.
Compulsory and exclusive. See, many times people say, when I'm going in the car, I chant Hanuman Chalisa. So what is happening? Or I do japa as I'm walking or this. Half the attention is already there. Please do that. Hanuman Chalisa chanting in the car is very good. As you are walking doing japa is excellent. But 10 minutes
Focus.
Exclusive and compulsory. See, the thing is not going to happen if you do once in 6 months, 10 minutes you do japa. No effect is going to come. Even meditation and all, I literally say that meditation is something that I can guarantee failure. The first time you do, nothing will happen.
True.
And another thing is that even for meditation, you talked about Vedantic meditation. It's a very important point to understand. Normal meditation, and now everyone is practicing meditation, and which is good. Whatever way of meditation you're doing, please continue. It's excellent. Do it. It'll give you peace of mind. It'll be a lot of things. I remember you also once telling me that no thought comes to mind.
Absolutely.
I just blank out. So we feel that this is meditation. Meditation means to go into a state of thoughtlessness. And that the mind, naturally, when there are no thoughts, because thoughts only, all the sorrow and all that is in the thoughts, in the deep sleep state, no thoughts, no sorrow. So we feel that is meditation. That is, Vedantic meditation is not that. If a person goes into a state of thoughtlessness, what they normally call as samadhi, samadhi is also of two types. One which is called Jada Samadhi and the other is called a Jnana Samadhi. What happens is, when you are in a Jada Samadhi, you come out again the same old person.
Out of the
When the
meditation.
thoughts come back, everything comes back. But when you'll be a little more peaceful, little more centered, all that will happen. It will be excellent. I please say, whatever you're doing, sadhanas, whatever type of meditation, please continue. Nothing wrong with that. But Vedantic, when you ask me about the Vedantic meditation, it is jnana. Knowing that I am that Satchidananda substratum from which the entire thought patterns come. I am that infinite self and not this body, mind, intellect, not this. And the whole world, as I see it, is nothing but that same Advaita truth. When this knowledge I sit with, I may go into a state of thoughtlessness. I may not go into a state of thoughtlessness. I will know the truth. I will know my own true nature, even when I come out. Otherwise, it is a jada samadhi. You come out again.
Same.
This is a story which I tell very often. It's a very interesting story. I guess we are nearing our end of this, so I can definitely tell you the story. There was this person, his name was Amthabai. Now, Amthabai, one fine morning, got up saying, I am a rat. And he started behaving. And then after that, every night, he would walk around the end of the house and the corner and do funny things. And the wife said, now how do I deal with this guy? So somehow, first of all, people with this mental states, they never admit that something is wrong with them. Somehow she managed to take him to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and said, kuch karo, how do I live with a man like that? So he said, how can you be a rat? You are Amthabai. You are not a rat. He said, you may say that, but I know I am a rat. And then he showed, this is a rat's photo. This is your photo. So do you look like that? No, I don't look like that. This is the rat's wife. This is your wife. A photograph. Yes. This is, no, that is not this. This is a rat has a tail here. You don't have a tail. So like that distinction was made. This is rat. This is the no. So then he says, yeah. You say what you say is right, but I don't feel. Again. So he says, this is not a case that's going to be solved in one day. So 6 months this went on.
Therapy.
And every time he's not going to say one time that you are an elephant, one time you are a donkey. Every time he'll say what? You are a Amthabai and not a rat. You are Amthabai, you are not a rat. That's the same old thing again and again. One fine morning, our dear Amthabai says, of course I'm Amthabai. How can I be a rat?
Beautiful.
I'm not a rat. I know I'm Amthabai. Doctor is very happy. Case solved. He says, congratulations, Amthabai. Live a happy life. Go. Amthabai goes out. 10 minutes later, he runs and comes back. He's sweating. What happened to you? He says, I know I'm Amthabai. There's a big black cat on the other side of the road. Does the cat know I am not a rat and I'm Amthabai?
Oh, back to square one.
What does it mean that deep down he still thinks he's a rat? Now this process explains Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasan, the way of Advaita Vedanta.
Beautiful.
We all think I am the body, mind, intellect. Do we or do we not?
Yes. And we
How many times have we heard I am Satchidananda Ananta Parabrahma Paramatma?
multiple times, Amma.
Multiple?
Yeah.
Some of us are even understood it. Have you? Someone is scared of saying yes also. Most of us are this. We have heard. We have heard. But we have not accepted. We have understood. Some of us have only heard, not even taken in a little bit of it. Some of us have understood it,
But not
and repeated listening to this only makes our understanding deeper. So same thing he did. He kept on saying, you are not this. So Vivek, Atma, Anatma, Vivek. This is Atma, this is Anatma, this is Jada, this is Chaitanya, this is Drashta, this is Drishya. This is Vivek all the time. Yes, I understand. Don't we all do that?
Yes.
So we always have a nod of understanding, but not the of realization.
Beautiful.
You understand? All of us, right now also, what are we
We are
doing?
nodding.
We are nodding. So all the time, this Shravanam makes you, yes, of course, I understand. Drashta and Drishya are different. The seer is different from the seen. How can I be the scene? If I see a mic, I don't become the mic. Similarly, I see a donkey, I don't become a donkey, thank God. Then I'm seeing my body, how can I be the body? So this understanding is there, but even acceptance is not there. Is it true or not?
Very true.
We don't accept. Even now, as you sit as this, I am infinite. This thought doesn't go. Supposing I say, you are very intelligent, immediately you'll say, thank you, Amma. You accept it in 1 second.
True. But
If I say, Bhopal crowd is such a wonderful crowd, oh, thank you.
Everybody's happy.
Immediately everyone is smiling. So that is accepted in 1 second. But when we say, you are Sachidananda, what next? हो गया काम खत्म खेल खत्म everything's over. What more can there be? And every other text of Vedanta will only
Same
say
thing.
the same thing, whether it is Vivek Chudamani or a Saddarshan
Panchakam.
or a Kathopanishad. But what do we say? One more text I want to study. So we always want to understand, but we don't want to experience. That will happen through mananam. And mananam cannot happen by more shravanam. Mananam happens through independent reflection. I sit with the thought. I actually sit with the thought. I am not the body. What does it mean I am not the body? Where is this thing I? Why did I start understanding I am a body? Did I actually... Is it a notion or is it an experience or is it a reality that I am not the body? Then why am I connected to this body and not to this body? What is it that makes me feel I am here and not there? You say I am everywhere. I don't feel that. So when I sit with these thoughts, rarely do we sit with these thoughts. Is it a fact or not?
true.
We rarely sit with these thoughts. We just want one more lecture or one more this. So manan is the way. Once the manan... So now Amthabai understood what? I am not that. He went very happy. Yes, I have accepted. I am not a rat. I am Amthabai. He went there. Then what happened? The world, one cat, immediately rat feeling came. Similarly, someone insulted. Again, I am not Sachidanand. I am what?
Very true, Amma.
So this thought has to get reinforced again and again, and that is where the Vedantic meditation comes. Nishtha prapta karne, to get abidance in the knowledge that I am this Sachidananda. That is called Nididhyasana in the Vedantic way. That is called Vedantic meditation. Nididhyasana, where I reassert, yes, I am. I am. That thought that I am Sachidananda, not just speaking it. Otherwise, what happens? I can say, Chidananda Rupa. And everyone listens to this and then they say, kya music hai? Arey, music nahi hai. Once I remember Gurudev, someone was saying, singing, Sarvam Brahmamayam, beautiful classical music, and everyone, ha. Then Gurudev said, re, this is not for music. This is to realize what? Sarvam Brahmamayam.
Absolutely. Amma.
That is important. This is called Vedantic meditation, to reinforce, to abide in this knowledge. And Shravana leads to, if you really are serious, it will automatically lead to Mananam. And doing Mananam itself will bring you into a state of meditation, Nididhyasana, where you reinforce this thought. And once you get hooked to it, so to speak, when you start loving this, you will wait to meditate. You will look forward to meditation. You will be in bliss every time. And see, people have these funny notions of good meditation, bad meditation. Why? When they feel some tingling or something and some chew,
Some light.
So we only want extra effects and side effects. We actually don't want. That's all we want.
Even neuroscientists, we just want to see if there is a theta which comes in or a beta which goes away, the brain waves, the theta state and what is happening. But we never want to accept what is going on behind the scenes. We are so elated and thrilled by the instrumental changes which is happening.
If I feel, they say, I feel that something tingling up going my spine and then I feel so peaceful. Yes, Amthabai is a peaceful rat. But he's still a
Rat.
Amthabai, that rat got some tingling, but he's still a rat. The idea is to know that I am Amthabai, not that I am a rat and a better rat and a peaceful rat and I am a thoughtless rat or anything. But to know that I am Amtabai. So this is Vedanta. Vedanta is very different in this, that all other meditations are fine and good. They prepare the mind. It's excellent. Continue the practice. It is important to do all the practices. But as you asked me, what is Advaita Vedanta and Vedantic meditation, I explained that it is Nididhyasana and to abiding in your own self.
Wonderful answer, Amma. And I think as we come close to the end of this, yes, questions will come in. Khel khatam kisi ka nahi hua na. So understanding has to deepen. and khel khatam hota to we won't be here. So thank you very much for this wonderful audience here, and to all the organizers. I am going to take a couple of questions and then we will close. So I think you, sir. Yes.
Living in the present moment and removing fears can help in this, going into the meditative state. Do you agree?
Remaining in the present moment.
Like if I'm here only. I'm listening to you only.
But then you are dependent on an outside thing. With that outside thing goes away, will you be fine with it?
I have experienced it.
No, but what happens is, see, you say, now for example, when I'm with my phone and I'm hooked to the phone, I'm very happy. And I keep on doing this, and time goes. Suppose you take away the phone. If phone is there, I am happy. Phone is not there, I am happy. Then I am happy. But if phone goes, I am unhappy. Then that, whatever it be the outside, then you are not in the present moment. See, right now you say you are listening to me, you are in the present moment. Yeah? Now, when this, as she said, now, when the mind is empty, you go into the past and the present. So, at that time, what happens? When the mind is, now, right now, you're doing something. As I said, no, when you have your phone, then you're doing something. So, at that time, the mind will be there. You're watching something interesting, it's something, and that also, very, very short things are there. If it's a very long thing, some long lecture, immediately you go to sleep. Isn't it? So it's not very, so therefore, because it's exciting, the mind is getting excited, so you're there. Take that away, are you still in the present at that time? Seeing the boredom. One of the very good exercises to watch yourself getting bored. You understand what is boredom. Just be there in a bored state and watch that mind as it's bored. Not getting bored, watching the mind getting bored. Then you are in the present.
Very true.
Otherwise, what happens is that when something is there, naturally everyone is in the present. You watch a wonderful movie or something, you are in the present. Movie gaya, then immediately the past, are uska dress aisa nahi tha, and ye nahi hona chahiye, aisa kyun kiya, aisa nahi hona chahiye. We go into all those things. We are not in the present after that. So that...
yes. Thank you, Amma, for answering that.
Yes, please.
And
Hari Om, Mama. So initially we were discussing about happiness. And we as a kid, the definition of happiness was something different. We grew up as adult, then we created another perception of happiness. So this continuous brain gymming is happening. And we are creating different kinds of brain muscles. So how do we, break those brain muscles and do the right brain gym? So for meditation, for everyone, like, the goal is same happiness, but how do we define that the goal is same and this is the same brain gym to go towards that? Yeah.
See, someone says happiness is in gulab jamun. Someone says happiness is in a relationship. Someone says happiness is in this. So, we have imposed happiness in that. You said, no, the child thinks happiness is this, adult thinks, that's why I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we have imposed happiness on something, but happiness is not in the object, it is our nature. So if I impose it on something, then what will happen? I become dependent and all that. So that is what we have to, if this, change in the thinking comes, that happiness is not the nature of the object, but is the nature of the subject. I, the Atma, the pure self, my true identity, then a whole different way of looking at the world starts.
Yeah. But the state of flow, when we enter the state of flow, the person is continuously doing the same thing, but not getting bored. And for him or herself, it's a kind of happiness, a state of bliss. So how do we define or justify that?
What happened? You're giving a classic example of the mobile, where everyone's just continuously looking at this, all the things. Now, interesting part about this is, till you're watching, you feel this. You feel interested, you feel good, because everything is changing. You don't even watch the same thing again, you watch something else keeps coming and all that. And your mind is occupied. At the end of the whole, let us say you have a binge of few hours, 6 hours, where your mind is occupied. How many of you have experienced long hours of binging?
Netflix.
I think almost all of you. So therefore, long hours of binging and all, and you are happy, you are not bored, it's very gripping, whatever it is, and you're watching it. At the end of that whole thing that you have watched, what is the state of your mind? Is it peaceful? Because you have been happy for so long, na? Are you peaceful? Are you feeling full and fulfilled? Is there any want in your life कि और चाहिए, कुछ चाहिए? And if it is that, then what have you achieved? You're still empty. You get it? So you're still an empty person. You're not full at all. So you have just been filling your mind with this, and still remaining empty. It's like a cylinder with, they say, no, that one I think there was a human skull. And they kept on putting more and more and kept on. It was never getting full. They said, why? Because niche se, there was a hole. So you keep filling. So all this, you said that the flow of happiness and all in that way, you keep on putting something, you're still empty. When you do meditation, let's say you really go into a deeper state of meditation, you just feel that peace. At that point of time, you are not that wanting self. You watch a beautiful sunset. I mean, and really watch it, not chalo picture lo. No. You actually watch a sunset. You watch at the pace of that sunset, just watch it go gently, watch the colors, watch this, and just become one with. I'm telling you, for at least half an hour, you will not be able to speak. You will not feel like getting up from there. You'll just feel like just being there. At that time, there's no want. Whereas if you go through this, you'll be empty. You'll still want something, or chahiye. So you understand the difference. There, you're just pleasure filling your mind and not getting that happiness and the satisfaction, bliss which you actually want.
Which is what your search is.
What is your search?
Absolutely. So there is, I think the time is limited. I don't know, I have to ask the organizers. Is it all right? One question is all right? But then I have to give to the person who... Okay, go ahead. Anybody witness? Sakshi? Please go ahead. Ji, bataiye.
Dr. Sweta, good evening. And I cannot say Amma because we call our Ma, being a Bengali. So, Ma Namaskar, Dr. Sweta Namaskar. During the course of this discussion, you had given the example that when a person's heart is working and the brain is not functional, so clinically you cannot declare him as a dead.
Correct.
Right? So that means soul is there. Atma, what we call, is there. And second scenario, that it is also towards Ma also, that when heart is not functioning, so energy is not there. So we call clinically dead. I think medically, you are a medical professional, you must be knowing that 2 hours or 4 hours time is given for that thing. My question to both of you, medically, I would like to know what happens to that Atma after death, and to Ma, spiritually, what happens to the Atma after death?
I'll answer that first. From the neuroscience perspective, there is no Atma, but it's more, we have near-death experiences. people have had this cardiac arrest or heart failure, and then they have gone into a state where there is suspended animation. They are not alive. So by technically, there's no pulse, there is no blood pressure, but then they do see some things happening around. I remember of a case which was mentioned by Dr. Raymond Moody, that the doctor was doing the cardiac arrest or the CPR, and then what happened was he got revived, and the doctor was searching for his pen. So he said the pen is inside that inside the bed's end. So the doctor was surprised. How do you know? He says, I was seeing the entire CPR. I was already observing the cardiac arrest, you know. So this is what is the near-death experience. Now, technically, as neuroscience, we have not experienced that subtle form. We have not mapped it. We don't know about it. It's a hypothesis that low oxygen is happening in the brain, and that's why these kind of experiences are also coming. But I think, Amma, you did mention about the subtle elements and the subtle body. Maybe you can just...
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Sweta. What you were telling, the process of death, right? I am asking, death has happened.
What
So
happens
what
to
happened after that?
Yes,
Yep.
Amma.
Okay. Now, first of all, let's... Atma, nothing happens to Atma. What happens is called, what leaves the gross body is called Jivatma. Normally, it says, uske Atma ko shanti mile. Atma is always Shanta Swarupa. It does not become Shanta. Okay? वो जो शांत होता है वो जीवात्मा. Jivatma goes from one body to the other body. This concept is, it's difficult to, in a short conversation, to talk about so many of these concepts. But Jivatma is this individualized ego self which says, I am this body, identifies with this body and says, I am this body, I am this mind, I am talking, I am... All of us have an ego. Ego does not in Vedanta mean pride. Okay? Pride is different. Ahamkar jo hota hai, ahankar means aham karoti. I am the doer, I am listening, I am talking. All of us have an ahankar, but not everyone will have pride. A very simple thing, supposing I say I am a sannyasini, I am a swamini, then that is called ahankara. But if I say I am the best swamini in the world, then that is called pride. Have you understood the difference? So the I notion that the Jivatma is the one that is saying I am alive and all, that Jivatiti Jivaha, that is the one that leaves the body, along with the subtle body, it goes. Vayur Gandha Nivashayat, it just goes very, you don't see the subtle body going. Ki arey uska subtle body ja raha hai. Like that we never see. So when we say, what happens to the Atma? Atma is all pervading. Space wanted to go for a walk. Where will space go? Space. आकाश को एक बार वॉक लेने का मन हुआ, कहाँ जाएगा? It's everywhere. Atma doesn't go, Atma doesn't come. Atma is it's the electricity. What happens to electricity when the bulb fuses? Nothing. It is still there, as it is, always. Okay, so what happens? The Jivatma is leaving one body, going to the other body. You know, that is the Shariram Yadavapnoti. It goes one body after the other. From when? Anadikal. Till when? Till it gets moksha. So nothing happens to the Atma. Atma is always Shanta Swarupa. And the Jivatma, we say, Shanta one, we say, what do we mean by that? That may it get a good body. And therefore, in our culture, it's so beautiful. We say, Swargavas ho gaya. Meaning, we say, acha, Swarg gaya. Narak gaya, aise nahi kehta hai. Kehte hai kya? So we always say, कि अच्छी sadgati mile. Don't we say that? That is what we should pray for also. Whenever we pray for a departed soul, what should we say? Usko sadgati mile. Means that person get a good body in a good place. Both the thing, yoni and sthana. May good body and a good place. So that their spiritual journey or whatever their journey is going forward. It goes forward. And then what do we pray? That the jiva, when it leaves, it should not linger around. See, the jiva is attached to this body itself. It may go, but when people also keep on holding that body, that person, you shanti. When the person goes, we say bye, jao. You know, like we wish them well. If they keep coming back, then we'll say jao abhi. Now you will also say, now let's finish the conversation. You understand? So let's now finish. Let's go. So therefore, this final thing, we tell the Jiva also that please now, go on your journey. May it be smooth. May it be without any problem. May you get a good body quickly in a nice place. That is what the... So Atma ko kuch nahi hota hai. When a person dies, the Jivatma goes. We can conclude.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the people for coming here and attending this. Thank you very much, Amma, for answering all the questions. And the last, not the least, but very last question is in our daily life, in our one simple way, how we can have Advaita Vedant's expression and experience. And then we close with that, and we thank the organizers for having us here as well.
Advaita Vedanta was the substratum of all our philosophy. And therefore, anything and everything in our life, in our culture, in our scriptures, in our vyavhar, express this Advaita truth alone.
True.
I will give you just one small, simple this. We do namaskar. When we started, what did we do? Namaskar. What is this namaskar? We teach children also, Jai Jai Karo. Please do namaskar, namaste bolo, namaskar. Na? So it's a simple greeting, but it's not just a simple greeting. The deeper meaning of the simple action of namaskar is Advaita Vedanta. How? What are we saying? That the God in you and the God in me are not different. They are one.
Beautiful.
The self in you and the self in me are not different. They are one. And to that one self, I prostrate.
Beautiful.
This is the Advaita. Now, imagine how much more simple can there be an expression of Advaita.
What a culture and what tradition, you know.
That the self in you, आपकी जो आत्मा, मेरी आत्मा, मद आत्मा, सर्वभूत आत्मा. आपकी जो आत्मा, मेरी आत्मा, वो दो नहीं है. वो क्या है? एक है. And to that one Atma is my prostration. With that, I prostrate to each one of you. Not as you as different, but the self in you and the self in me is one. And to that Bhagwan, who pervades every one of us, is my namaskar. Thank you very much. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I am sure that with this understanding of neuroscience and a little Advaita, each one of us will strive for the ultimate goal, which is Nitya Ananta Sukha, and spend at least 10 minutes. Exclusive, compulsory,
Non-negotiable.
minimum, non-negotiable God time. Hari Om and Namaskar.